إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم.
Hadith Qirtas and the succession to the Prophet, this is from the fundamental doctrinal differences of between Ahlus Sunnah and Ahlus Shia. That's why we having the third session on the same topic. The first session that was presented by Shaykh Muhammad Umar bin Ramazan, right, Sunni perspective on this hadith, and that was excellent paper. Then later, because the authenticity of this riwayah hadith Qirtas, because this is doubted from some quarters, so Sheikh Abu Jafar, and he highlighted and he discussed and he assessed the authenticity of this narration last time, and that was quite excellent, and he had covered all sides. And today we're going to listen the Shia perspective on this hadith Qirtas in terms of succession and the relevant issues. Shaykh Mahmood Saab is here, mashallah. I have to request first Shaykh Arif.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We're very fortunate and honored to have our dear Shaykh Mahmood presenting to us the conclusion on the issue of Qirtas. Shaykh Mahmood was born in Africa, then migrated with his parents to Sweden in 1972 when Idi Amin asked, obviously, the Indians to leave Africa. Thereafter, he studied there, worked there, then he came and joined us here in the mid-90s. He completed his Islamic education at the Al-Mahdi Institute, went on to Birmingham University and completed his MPhil in Islamic Studies and philosophy. Since then, we have had the honor of having Shaykh Mahmood here as teaching and then representing the Al-Mahdi Institute in a variety of different organizations and forums. He is also the Imam, the official Imam of Jummah and Jamaat here at the Al-Mahdi Institute, and he lectures to the wider public on behalf of the Al-Mahdi Institute and also assists in research with various departments and has his own research. So, Shaykh Mahmood.
Jazakallah khairan, Shaykh Arif Saab. Now, I request Shaykh Mahmood Saab, please, to present your paper and your research work on this topic.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ربي شرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي علماء كرام السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Thank you, my teacher and Ustad, for that very, very honorable introduction, Jazakallah, and also for having this opportunity to be here with you, respected scholars, about this discussion of Qirtas. I have to state, I'm not a historian, yes, but the findings are from research that has undertaken and been conducted. Walaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So before we enter into the discussion, we just want to give an overview and a preamble. And the first question that stares at us is the question that we can see, that why did the Prophet not leave a written will, while the Quran commands every Muslim who has something to will to make a will? Now, as Dr. Saab has said, that previously we have had discussions about this by respected Shaykh Umar Ramadan and Shaykh Abu Jafar. They have discussed a lot of things, and for the brevity, I'm not going to touch about what was discussed there. So, an attempt to answer the previous question and present the Shia view, this is the general and broad format that we are going to have. Was the will about succession? If so, who was it about, and who was included there? Why did the Prophet not write the will after the incident, despite living for about 3 days? So the first session discussed the Sunni's perspective. The second session discussed the authenticity of the narration, and this is the Shia perspective that has not been discussed. The topic is the final will of the Holy Prophet, which was not implemented. Of course, we are coming to the narration itself, but it is important for the context to see what the Quran and a hadith are saying in this matter in terms of making a will. As you can see, we have the verse here in front of us, كُتِبَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِذَا حَضَرَ أَحَدَكُمُ الْمَوْتِ, which you are all familiar with, that it is prescribed when death approaches any one of you, if he leaves any valuables, that he makes a bequest to parents and closest kins in the legitimate way. It is a duty of every righteous. حَقًّا عَلَى الْمُتَّقِينَ. Although the verse speaks of the imperativeness of writing, kutiba is as an imperative, without specifying a method. However, as we will see, the Prophet commanded the Muslims to make their wills in writing. We have a few references here, you can see them, but for the sake of brevity, I will just mention the first one. That Muslim in his Sahih recorded the following, that Abu Salim reported that the Messenger said, a person who has something which he may will has no right to stay 3 nights without his written will. In the second reference, it's the written will. In the third reference, it's the written will. And the ahadith are recorded by Muslim in his Sahih. The second of them is also recorded by Al-Bukhari in his Sahih. We can see that there is a place for the written will. A written will is something which stays, whereas a verbal will can be increased or decreased, whereas there is less chance of doing so with something that is written. Absence of a written will of the Prophet is an astonishing thing indeed. When you look at the context, there must have been some unusual cause for this and the prevention of writing such a will. What happened? So when we look at the sources, as we examine them, we will see. Our aim is to assess the case in the light of the verse of the Quran and the relevant ahadith. Now, we are going to look at the report of the incident. So, of course, the references are many, but for the sake of brevity, we have only selected a few. So this again is from Sahih al-Bukhari, and I'm going to just share with you the English, where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, said, "Bring for me utuni, writing paper, and I will write for you a statement after which you will not go astray." But Umar said, "The Prophet is seriously ill, and we have got Allah's book with us, and that is sufficient for us." But the companions of the Prophet differed about this, and there was a hue and a cry. On that the Prophet said to them, "Qumu anni, go away and leave me alone. It is not right that you should quarrel in front of me." And then we have what Ibn Abbas also came out saying and feeling very saddened about this event, saying that it was a most unfortunate event that Allah's apostle was prevented from writing that statement for them because of their disagreement and noise. So here we have another reference, again, similarly depicting the same incident, but there is a little bit of difference in wording. And we also have this, of course, from Shia sources, and we have just picked one here, who is from the great scholar Shaykh Mufid, one of the great authorities and sources from the Shia school of thought, almost similar with a slight variation. For further references to these incident, you can refer back to Sheikh Abu Ja'far's presentation. So again, we find here in the reference of Sheikh Mufid that he said, "Bring me ink and parchment so that I may write a document for you, after which you will never go astray." Again he fainted, and one of those present rose to look for ink and parchment. "Go back," Umar ordered him. "He is delirious." The man went back. Later those present regretted the dilatoriness they had shown in bringing the ink and parchment and rebuked each other. They used to say, "We belong to Allah and to Him we will return," but we have become anxious about our disobedience to the Apostle of Allah. May Allah bless him and his family. Of course, there are a lot of other references as well, and one such is where also there were women present there, and they also complained about what was going on, and they in fact said, "Bring him paper and pen." And the Prophet remarked about the women that they are better than you, comparing to those who had stopped this. It appears from the narrations that Sahaba failed to obey the order of the Prophet on the pretext that the Prophet was suffering and was delirious. Now we have to understand the position of obedience to the Holy Prophet in light of the Quran. And we see here in the first verse, "Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu astajibu lillahi wa lirasulihi idha da'akum lima yuhyikum." Believers, respond to God and His Messenger when He calls you to that which gives you life. Again, this is a command taking place here, that you have to respond to God and to His Messenger. And as you can see, responding to the Messenger is akin to responding to God. We have another reference in Surah An-Nur as well, where the believers are supposed to say, "Sami'na wa ta'na." So we can see by this that the Sahaba left the request of the Prophet unfulfilled, whereas they were duty bound, according to what we can see in the Quran, to obey the order of the Prophet. Submission to the Prophet is not conditional. It is unconditional. It does not need the physical condition of the Prophet, that only when the Prophet is okay, only then he must be obeyed. But when he is suffering from anything, he may be ignored or disobeyed. And we do not have any evidence either that the Sahaba came back to the Prophet afterwards, despite his condition having improved during the 3 remaining days, to rectify this. And it appears, with due respect, that to the Sahaba, that this was an unjustifiable act. Was the will about succession? What was the will about? Based on the following findings, it seems very strongly that the will was about succession. It was the established sunnah of the Prophet to appoint an Amir in Medina whenever he had to go out for any kind of task or for any amount of time. Biographers have recorded all such occasions where the Prophet had appointed Amirs over Medina, and we find this narrated or accounted for by Ibn Hisham. It is clearly inconceivable that when he is leaving his ummah, he is not appointing anybody. And again, I know it might be a bit hard for you to see, but the references are here. I'll just mention a few of them for those of you if you can't see. So for example, when he left for Badr, he appointed Abu Lubaba. When he left for Dumat al-Jandal, he appointed Ibn Arfata. When he left for Banu Qurayda, he appointed Ibn Maktoum, etc., etc., etc. So he would always have this habit of appointing people in his place when he would go. So he constantly appointed successors whenever he planned to leave Medina. And as we said, when he is leaving his nation forever, it does not seem consistent that he does not leave some kind of instrument or document or measure of appointing somebody after him. And the Prophet had already been prophesied that his ummah will be divided immediately after his demise, and leading so much so that they will be killing each other. And we have this also, that the incident with his companion Ibn Muwayhiba and the incident of Baqi, where Prophet is forewarning him and foretelling him that the faith testing trials are coming as pieces of a dark night, as one night follows each other. This is also reported in Ibn Hisham. In light of this, the Prophet is most higher in terms of saving his ummah. Even an ordinary wise person cannot be expected to do the same if he was to foresee that there is going to be dissension amongst his people. A father knowing that there is going to be quarreling amongst his children after his passing away would take all the measures that he is able to make sure that this doesn't happen after him. Here we have the Prophet who is more protective, more caring in terms of saving his ummah. An-Nabi awla bil mu'minin min anfusihim, as the verse says. The Prophet is more protective, is also a translation to look at this. And as we will see later, events prove this prophecy of the Prophet about what he had been prophesied about. And as we also mentioned, that him being the guardian of the faith, he is also obliged to safeguard his nation. Now, this is not something that only the Prophet was concerned about. In fact, both the respected caliphs were also concerned about this notion, namely the notion of succession. We find that Khalifa Abu Bakr was so mindful about the fitna after him, he dictated his will in his final moments in favor of Khalifa Umar. He made Khalifa Umar his successor. He was so weak due to his severe illness, he fainted during the process of dictating his will. He wasn't stopped at any time by being told that the Quran is sufficient for us, and his will was implemented. Khalifa Umar, just before his death, was demanded by Sahaba to appoint his successor. And the reason was to save the Ummah from fitna, from division, from civil wars. Khalifa Umar then passed on his long will, which was implemented. Thus he did not leave the Muslim nation without a directive. He defined a method by which a caliph would be selected. Likewise, it is inconceivable that the Prophet was not concerned for his ummah. The same thing was uttered by the Prophet, "I write something for you, after which you will not go astray after me." But it was not implemented. It was stopped. So why was there an opposition of the will? Some scholars say that Khalifa Umar opposed the Prophet's will out of compassion. The Prophet was dying and he was extremely tired. And you can see and say, yes, this is something there, You take compassion for somebody who is in a very difficult state and you don't wish to burden them more, which is a human sentiment. And that writing a directive at such a time would just increase his difficulty and pain. And the Khalifa Umar did not wish to burden the Prophet at such a time. If we look closer, we will see that this explanation is erroneous. When is it actually possible for a Muslim to prevent another Muslim, whether commoner or great, from writing his will when that person is about to die? We have already seen that Abdullah ibn Umar reported that the Messenger said that a person who has something to will has no right to stay 2 nights unless his will is written. Here the Prophet is in his last time. At that time, nobody really knew when the Prophet is going to depart. The duty of every Muslim, especially a prominent person such as Khalifa Umar, is to assist his Muslim brother in fulfilling his religious duty. And here, it is not just any Muslim brother. It is none less than the Prophet himself. He is the founder of faith. It was the duty of Khalifa Umar to offer him all the assistance to fulfill his duty. And if the Prophet had said, I'm going to leave something with you that you will not go astray after, the Prophet always spoke the truth. He was known as the Al-Amin. There would be no reason for him to say anything contrary now on the last moments of his life. And in fact, Khalifa Umar, as an outstanding Muslim and sincere towards the nation, should have been the one who welcomed such a state and would have been the one who is the most happy to receive such a directive. I'll give you a simple example. If a person has the obligation to pray, which all of us have, and let's say that person who has the obligation to pray is not feeling well or is sick, and he asks for wudu in order to pray, to fulfill his obligation. Would I say to such a person, look, you are not feeling well, you are sick, you don't have to pray? Or will I try and assist that person by enabling him to fulfill his obligation? As we will see that the will was about succession, now the question is, who was meant by the succession? In order to understand this case, again, we are obliged to turn to the Quran to understand. We see that, firstly, the final prophet principally belonged to the great channel of prophethood according to great number of verses. For example, we have here in the surah number 2, verse 136. So you believers say, we believe in God and in what was sent down to us and what was sent down to Abraham, Ismail, Ishaq, Yaqub, and the tribes, and what was given to Moses, Jesus, and all the prophets by their Lord. So he belongs to this great chain of prophets. And again, in the other verse, we find this as well. The Quran has mentioned the successorship of the prophets now, the prophet belonging to this great chain of prophets that have passed. Now the Quran mentions the successorship of the prophets had been within their own close family. We find again, Surah number 2, verse 136, where it speaks that about this. It's referring to asbat. And one tafsir of this asbat is referred to the grandchildren from the plural, from the singular sibt. Asbat is plural, used in the Quran to describe in the first instance Abraham, Ishaq, Yaqub, and their immediate descendants, and consequently the 12 tribes which followed from this ancestry. And again, we have a lot of references in that regard, which is speaking about that successorship went to the close family of these past prophets. Following this established example of the Quran, the successor of the prophet would also be from his close family members or his Ahlul Bayt. Imam Ali's leadership had already been declared by the Prophet on certain occasions. The khutbah of the occasion of Ghadir, which is one of the most prominent of these occasions. And if we look at this, it needs to be reflected objectively, because it is establishing a few points here, namely 3 points, which are not separate when you look at them closely. They are actually interrelated. And you are all, of course, familiar with the khutbah of Ghadir. And for the sake of brevity, I don't need to say it to you, but in brief, the Prophet is saying, "O people, verily I am leaving behind 2 matters, amrain." There is a different word in other narrations. Thaqalain, exactly, ahsant. 2 weighty things, 2 heavy things. If you follow them, you will never go astray. These 2 are the book of God and my Ahlul Bayt, my Itra. Then he says thrice, "Do you know that I have more right over the believers, inni awla bil mu'minin, than they have over themselves?" The people agreed and confirmed. And then he said, "Whoever I am master, Ali is also his master." And again, we find this in the references. And again, there are many, many more references from both Sunni and Shia sources. Now, if you look at this, the following parts of the khutbah, that the Prophet speaks about his superior right over the lives of the believers than they have over themselves. That's one thing. Then he talks about that whoever he is the Mawla of, this Ali is also the Mawla of. And then he talks about that is Ahlul Bayt, and as we will see, Ali also shall never be separated from one another until the last day. The successorship of Ali should be considered in the whole of the context of the khutbah when the Prophet is talking about these points. The closeness of the Prophet to the lives of the believers even more than the believers themselves. So, this would apply to Ali as well. Secondly, whoever I am the Mawla of, this Ali is also the Mawla of. So the nature of Mawlawiyat is not friendship here. Ali is not indicated as a friend. He is not indicated as a prophet either, of course, which is clear, but as a successor. In what sense is the Prophet the Mawla of all believers? In the same sense does the Mawlawiyah of Imam Ali apply. It cannot be taken to mean just simply friendship as is viewed by the majority of Muslims. It must be perceived jointly with the prophetic wilaya. Thirdly, the Prophet declared Ali as the authority of the interpretation of the Holy Quran when he talked about the Ahlul Bayt, because we have also a narration from Salama reported that she heard the Prophet saying, Ali is with the Quran and the Quran is with Ali. They will not part with each other until the day of judgment. We find this in Al-Hakim Al-Mustadrak. We also see the same message previously conveyed in the last expedition of Tabuk, when the Prophet appointed Imam Ali as the leader of Medina. He declared him as Harun to him, likening the position of Harun to Musa mentioned by the Quran. And this is known as the Hadith al-Manzila as well. And of course, here I don't need to retell it because you are already familiar with this hadith. And again, there are many, many references from both schools of thought regarding this. So again, we are obliged to grant the same position to Imam Ali in the respect of the final prophet. So in light of these occasions, Ghadir and Tabuk, it becomes clear that the Prophet intended to write the will in favor of Imam Ali. And also we have many such other events, such as Yawmud Darul, Hadithul Ashira, which we have not included for the sake of brevity. If you look at all of these things together as a whole, they alone would suffice. But if you look at them as a whole, you can see that in the end of his days, the Prophet is merely confirming all of these things. He's not going to be doing something contrary to all of these things that he has done before. Some scholars believe that the will was in favor of Khalifa Abu Bakr and not Imam Ali. We need to examine this a little closer. Had the will of the Prophet been in favor of Khalifa Abu Bakr, the result would have been different in terms of the implementation of the will. As it has been established by historical facts, it was Khalifa Umar who was the main person to oppose this will along with his adherents. Later developments in terms of Khilafah after the demise of the Prophet clearly showed that it was Khalifa Umar who played a major role for the leadership of Khalifa Abu Bakr in Saqifa, and also later on convincing the tribes of the same cause. So if that is the case, he would not have opposed it in the first place. Rather, he would have insisted to bring the material to writing. Another point is that despite the Ummah electing Khalifa Abu Bakr as a Khalif immediately after the Prophet, it did not save the Ummah from division and dispute which occurred in Saqifa first and finally led to civil wars. And the will of the Prophet was about the formula which had to save from just this, from division and civil wars. So, had Khalifa Abu Bakr been the intended one, it would have gone against what the Prophet had said, because he was giving a formula to save his ummah from that, and yet that was not saved after Khalifa Abu Bakr came as the successor. And we are coming close towards the end. Why did the Prophet not write his will after this incident? While he lived for a good time and there was other opportunities for him to do that. It's a very, very, very important question. We find that he lived up to 3 days after this event. The Prophet is commanded by the Quran to convey whatever he received despite any opposition. The question is a challenge for both Sunnis as well as Shias, because the Prophet clearly said, I will write something for you after which you will never go astray. Did he convey this? Indeed, he had conveyed on several occasions in clear terms and had fulfilled his task. During the remaining 3 days, he never tried to write what he wanted in order to save his ummah from further division, especially the calamity which was inevitable. How, you may ask? We may understand this clearer from the hadith narrated by the great Sunni Muhaddith and jurist Shah Waliullah al-Dehlwi in his book Izalatul Khafa an Khilafatil Khulafa. And again, for the sake of brevity, and I know you can't see it, and I've just taken a picture of where it is, of the reference, but I'm not going to read the Arabic for you, but I will just share with you the English. And the chain goes back to the great companion Hudhayfa ibn Yaman, who narrated that some companions asked the Prophet, "Would you appoint a Khalifa for us?" The Prophet replied, "If I appoint a Khalifa for you, you would disobey him, and then the punishment would descend." They asked again, "Would you appoint Ali as a Khalifa for us? That would be more suitable." The Prophet replied, "You will not do it, i.e., you will not bear it, you will not obey him. And if you did obey him, you would find in him a guide and someone who is guided, and he will lead you onto the right way. Yasluku bikum at-tariqal mustaqim." So this is one of the reasons why the Prophet did not write his will after the incident, despite living for some days. Another reason is the method of the opposition was clearly casting doubt on the consciousness of the messenger and the soundness of his mind at this hour. When soundness of the words of the Prophet are doubted, the directive is rendered ineffective. If such a doubt could be expressed while he is alive, it is much easier to express such a doubt after his demise. The Prophet foresaw this and saw that the intended directive had lost its significance and would not serve its purpose.
Let's speed up.
Yeah. Finally, we are coming to the conclusion. In conclusion, we can say that the last will was about succession of Imam Ali based on the following 3 points. According to the Quran, in the case of the previous prophets, the leadership has always remained within the close family of the prophets. There is no exception now for the final prophet and messenger. And Imam Ali is from the close family and Ahl al-Bayt of the Prophet. Point number 2, it was the established sunnah of the final prophet to appoint Umara in Medina whenever he left. What about when he is leaving the world? Would he not appoint somebody? Number 3, the will was only reaffirming Imam Ali as has been established by Ghadir, Hadith Manzila and many other such events. Another point is that, separate point, the respected Khalifs Abu Bakr and Umar were both worried about the future of the Ummah, and both of them made their final will in terms of their successors. While Khalif Abu Bakr was severely suffering from fever and virtually fainted during the process of dictation, while Khalif Umar was taking his last breaths, being severely wounded, and issued a long dictate concerning his successor, nobody reminded them or used the phrase Hasbuna Kitabullah. The will was stopped by stating Hasbuna Kitabullah, which is another point and very important point. While the Muslims differed, divided and disputed, first in Saqifa and later got involved in civil wars and killing each other, the Quran was still there with them. The Quran still being there and sufficient in terms of hidayah. After the will of the Prophet had been prevented, he never tried to dictate during the remaining 3 days due to the fitna and common disobedience after his death. He was prevented while he was alive. What would be the guarantee after his death? Jazakumullah khairan.
Thank you very much, Shaykh Mahmood Sahab, for your excellent paper, which is so far we can see quite comprehensive, academic, covering all sides here. And there are a very important point which I quoted here, the points of reflection for both Ahlul Sunnah and Ahlul Shia here. I think this is, we can say, one of the best papers here. Jazakumullahu khairan.